Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our earlier than normal meeting at 12:30 today at the CBRD office for a City of Courtenay Council meeting. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. Also would like to just acknowledge today's Pink Shirt Day, just to bring awareness to bullying and just to let people know that love wins out every time. And so just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. And there are a few of us that are wearing pink today as well. So I just want to acknowledge those that have done that. And I know that those that are not wearing pink are wearing pink in their own way. So really appreciate that. Pink heart. There we go. Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Something we're going to be starting this meeting as well. Just want to acknowledge that we've worked hard as a council, and we've really focused on making sure we have lively debate. But we are going to be making sure that we're staying focused and on task. And so one of the things we'll be doing to that end as well, it'll be one question each per councillor, but they can always get back in the line for extra questions. With that being said, we're going to see if there's any late introductions, but I don't believe so. And we'll go into the adoption of minutes from February 14th. Excellent. Were there any errors or omissions? Anybody opposed to adoption? See none. That passes unanimously. Moving on to staff reports, we're going to start by the procedure bylaw amendments, and I will pass it over to staff. Mr. Garber.
Thank you. Through the mayor, we have a staff report with respect to procedural amendments to our procedure bylaw. The recommendation from staff is on page 6 of the agenda. Staff are here if council has any questions with respect to these amendments.
All right, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I shall move the recommendation that council directs staff to bring forward a bylaw to amend the council procedure bylaw number 2730/2013 with the items as noted on the agenda.
Great, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? See no discussion. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. All right, moving on to rec and culture. We have the research proposal for college and community social innovation grants. And I'll pass it back over to our city manager, Mr. Garber.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, we have a staff report that addresses an opportunity to work with Langara College to address a three-year project whereby staff would participate and look at the opportunities to address the relationship between new immigration and our recreation services. The staff, we have a few options. Our recommendations start on page 31 of the agenda, and staff are here should council have any questions.
Excellent. Thanks for those comments. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Jolicoeur.
I was just going to move the motion. Yeah, great. So that council directs staff to provide a letter of support indicating that the City of Courtenay's commitment to participating in Langara's College Department of Recreation Studies research proposal to the College and Community Social Innovations Fund.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. All right, moving on to the Comox Valley Nature Garry Oaks Restoration and Stewardship Pilot Project. I'll pass that over to staff as well. Mr. Garber.
Thank you. The Mayor to Council, we have in front of you a memorandum of understanding with Comox Valley Nature outlining the terms and conditions of the city's support to the Garry Oaks Restoration Pilot Project. The staff report provides an overview of the project, and we have recommendations on page 40. Staff are available for questions.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I do have one question. I'm just curious if staff could clarify the extent to which what we're proposing works for the citizens group that is advocating for this project.
Thank you, Mayor, through council. We have worked, we've met with the Comox Valley Nature, and we have gone through this process and the proposal with them. And through our meetings, they've agreed that this project process that we've proposed is a good one. It is a long-term initiative collaboration, and once we go through all the phases and steps, we can look at a long-term stewardship agreement.
All right, and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge that I know there are a number of representatives of the group in the council chambers today, and I'm sure that council would want to voice appreciation for their efforts. And hopefully we can move forward with this together. It sounds like a great innovation for the city. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, and not just their efforts, but their patience as well. So it is very much appreciated. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just a question for staff as well. Are we, given that it's a pilot project, are we expected to have a report back to council on how the project goes?
Thank you, Mayor, Councillor Jolicoeur. There will be annual reporting if we move ahead with the 5-year agreement. And part of that, we would also come back to council with an agreement which council would approve, basically covering the deliverables required reporting that would be associated with the grant.
All right, excellent. Thanks for that. Ms. Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to council, just to clarify, as Ms. Chan said, there will be annual reporting if council directs us to proceed with the agreement, but one of the resolutions in front of you is to direct staff to enter into that service agreement. So that service agreement would not come back to council for approval. This would be your direction at this time to proceed with it based on the conditions and responsibilities outlined in the staff report and the resolution.
All right, and by pilot project, it's pilot, but it's still 5 years. So we're committing to that 5 years at the outset. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move the first recommendation. The council authorize staff to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with Comox Valley Nature as required to initiate the Garry Oaks remediation and stewardship project, and that upon the execution of the memorandum of understanding, council approve a grant up to $5,800 from gaming funds to cover tree risk abatement activities.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, Councillor Jolicoeur?
Yeah, sorry, I did have another clarification question, was just, so in the MOU, in the staff report under financial implications, it speaks to the 5,800 for the abatement this year, which is in the motion, but then it also speaks to an additional 4,000 for the term of 2024 to 2028. And so is that 4,000 in this motion, is that included in this motion? Okay.
Motion 2.
Okay, great, thanks.
That good? Excellent. All right. That being said, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously, and we'll move to recommendation 2. And Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I'll move that upon third-party environmental assessment review of the Garry Oaks remediation and stewardship project, council delegate authority to the Director of Recreation, Culture and Community Services to negotiate and execute a 5-year agreement with Comox Valley Nature to support the initiative and activities outlined within the Comox Valley Nature Garry Oaks remediation and stewardship project. And that council approve up to $4,000 from gaming funds for each year of the 5-year agreement in matching funds to support the Garry Oaks remediation and stewardship project.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any questions or comments regarding the second recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Next, we'll move into community priorities for RCMP fiscal year 2024-2025, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garber.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, on page 71 of the agenda, we have an email request from Staff Sergeant Kilbourne requesting feedback on community priorities for the RCMP fiscal year 24-25. Council has had a number of meetings with the RCMP. We understand that having a sit down to discuss this priorities is a strategic goal of council. We have a recommendation for you for consideration that includes a committee of the whole meeting to discuss those community priorities.
All right, thanks for that. And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, I was just going to move the recommendation that staff be directed to schedule a committee of the whole meeting for the purpose of discussing the RCMP community priorities for 24-25, and that the RCMP be invited to attend the committee of the whole, and that the date and time of the committee of the whole meeting be determined in association with the RCMP in order to accommodate their availability.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously, and we'll move on to internal reports and correspondence. And we have our management reports. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, we have 4 management reports. In the past, we've basically introduced them and have the different directors available for questions. We have the development services, operational services, financial services, and fire department management reports for council's receipt, and directors are available for questions.
Thank you so much for that. And if somebody would like to move receipt of said reports. Excellent. It's been moved and seconded. Just making sure staff got the names. Perfect. And are there any questions, comments, discussion on any of the reports? See none. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. And just really want to acknowledge staff that are keeping us abreast of the things that are happening. It's great. And I would say no questions is actually a sign of the fact that the things that need to be getting done are getting done. So much appreciated. Moving on to item 6.2, we have the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. Thanks for doing that. And it was the minutes. Sorry, I stopped talking, but it's the minutes for that group. Are there Councillor Hillian?
Thanks, Mayor. I was just curious about these minutes because it looked like the meeting lasted for an hour and a half, and but all the items of business noted they were carried to next meeting, so it wasn't really clear what went on for an hour and a half. I don't know if our council representative might want to enlighten us.
Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, there was agenda published for this meeting, but it was the annual Christmas dinner. So the meeting agenda was just carried over to the actual next meeting. So I'm surprised there was minutes at all.
Yeah, Mr. Garbutt.
Through to the mayor to council. So just procedurally, we'll need to be clear about that. And we want to make sure that we're meeting the requirements of the community charter and our own procedure bylaws in these. So we had a discussion about that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Mr. Garbutt. Much appreciated. And I believe they've been moved, so I'll just call the vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. And move on to 6.3, improvements in the Billmore Basement Diamond Park. And I believe we've got a staff presentation, and we'll pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. We really are happy to report back to council with a briefing note on proposed improvements by the Comox Valley Baseball Association to the baseball diamond located at Billmore Park. It's a absolutely critical piece of infrastructure for this sport, and it's really exciting to have a user group come forward with the financial resources to assist us in this regard. Mr. Taylor Green from Comox Valley Baseball is here, as is Ms. Saunders, if council has any questions on the project.
All right. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I know that we're trying to be more expedient with these, but I do think it would be useful to hear something from the representative with regards to this. It's a fairly significant asset in the community, and I know the mayor and I had the opportunity to meet with a representative of Rotary regarding the support for it. But I think it'd be good if we could have that shared with the community. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. I certainly agree on this project. If you push your little button on the front there, down, big silver one, there we go. I'll get your microphone turned on. There you go.
Excellent.
So if you want to give a sort of a brief description of what's happening and kind of the ask from, or did you want to? Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe introduce yourself as well.
absolutely. My name is Taylor Green. I grew up in the Comox Valley, born and raised, went to Placerview Elementary, then Valley View and Courtney Junior, and then final years at Isfeld, the first graduating class. So my journey, just to explain a little bit about myself, I love sports. Sports has been a huge part of my life. Luckily, one of the fortunate few to kind of make my way up through high school, play for the national team, receive scholarships, and then ultimately play in the major leagues with Milwaukee Brewers. So it was quite an experience. And even more fortunately, after my career was over, I'm still now part of the scouting department and oversee international scouting for the Brewers, which allows me to live at home. And the reason why I've been able to be so supportive of the program that means so much to me and has given so much to me, just to my family and myself. But the project is through the CVBA, and the CVBA has two main goals. I've been involved with the CVBA for about 18 months now, 16 months actually, and we have two main objectives. Number one, grow the love of sport, baseball and any other sport, just for the community, and that's with the recreational players, boys, girls as young as 4 years old. Just the health benefits and everything involved with that is just tremendous. And number two, which kind of partners together, is provide our local high performing athletes at age 13 to 18 a local place to play. In the past, in many other sports, if you're a strong player, you're forced to leave the valley because there's not the resources or teams to stay competitive, and you're driven out of town. Myself being an example, when I was 13 years old, I started out traveling an hour each way. My parents would take me down to Parksville or Nanaimo or wherever the practices were, and that process has continued for baseball and many other sports until now. Hopefully, we have a very unique opportunity with one of the highest caliber teams in the province and the country to create a home base in the Comox Valley. And part of that is what this proposal is. We would need significant field upgrades at Billmore Park or any other local facility, but Billmore Park obviously made the most sense. And that's what's kind of led to this here. That's what led to, the Rotary stepping up, and honestly, a lot of other private donors stepping up to build this project. And ideally, this isn't just a one-time thing. This is something myself and our board is very passionate about. We started to see some benefit last year with not only the kids that didn't have to travel so much on these teams, but the younger kids as part of the CVBA and the families. We started this program called Saturday Night Lights, and it was free pizza and free juice boxes for kids to come out and watch some of these older teams play, and it was very successful. And with facility upgrades and a high caliber of baseball, it could turn into something pretty special for the Comox Valley to have. So we're really excited about it. And the upgrades are fairly simple, but they would have huge impact on what we're trying to accomplish. And like I mentioned, this isn't a 1-year project for us. This is something we want to keep doing continuously, work with the city, work with the community, and just keep building this up over years and years and years, because it has a chance to be pretty special. But I appreciate the time, and if any questions or comments, please feel free.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, Councillor Helene and I had a great pleasure to chat with one of the Rotarians who is spearheading it. Yeah, he's really passionate as well. So great to see that happening. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to answer questions in conjunction with this report today. I think it's a great proposal. It's really nice to see improvements directed to a specific, additional program delivery being asked for, and then the bonus here being that the baseball community and the wider community is looking for ways to support this without seeking direct funding from the city for it. So like in our report, it's saying that there is no direct financial implication because you and your organization have done a great job finding other funding means. So I'm just wondering if you want to share with us how much this is. I mean, you did say that some of this is relatively simple, but just how much is coming from the community and Rotary to see these improvements realized.
Yeah, at this point in time, we're probably 75, 85, close to $100,000 worth of donations in kind and just pure cash. So it's been tremendous support. And like I said, this is just year one. I'm hoping to keep building this over years and years and just support the area. Support the park. It's a great park. It has a lot of potential. And we're hoping to fully realize that.
Yeah, wow, great. That's an impressive amount of fundraising in a short amount of time. I first overheard about you looking for a location for this and kind of, I know you spoke with maybe some of the Comox counselors, and I personally think that Billmore Park is a really great location for doing this, and so I'm happy to see this come forward. So thank you for that. And I do have a question for staff and just how these improvements may fit in with some of the planning that we're doing around Billmore Park in the upcoming year.
Sorry about that. Ms. Saunders.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Councillor McCollum. So we do have proposed in the financial plan to conduct a park plan for Billmore Park in 2024. In the future of Billmore, we foresee both baseball and football continuing to be sort of prime users of that space. So we don't see any of the improvements that are being suggested posing any challenges to that park planning process. And as we had a conversation with CVBA, a goal of that park planning process is the activation of that park, and what they're proposing will also increase that community activation and involvement in the space. And when we enter into an agreement about improvements in the park, there is always sort of the language that allows the city to make changes in the future if we need to. And we've had those conversations with CVBA as well.
So thanks, Councillor McCollum. And I don't see any other questions at this point.
So I did originally have Councillor Coker moving receipt, but I didn't get a seconder.
Okay.
So, okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCollum, for seconding receipt of that. And now that we've got that figured out, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thanks. And again, thanks so much for your dedication. And I, knowing all the excitement that Rotary has behind it and the rest of our community, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of success ahead. So
Thank you guys very much. Much appreciated.
all right. Excellent. Moving right along, we're going to move into councillor resolutions, and we're going to start with Councillor Hillian and Councillor Cole Hamilton and their resolution. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Hillian and I would like to move that whereas youth are particularly impacted by the climate crisis, and Youth Climate Corps BC is an organization that has worked successfully with local governments in BC to empower youth, providing paid work and training to young people in climate action projects that foster hope by helping to reduce emissions, build resiliency, and adapt communities to the changing climate. Therefore, be it resolved that the council direct staff to explore and report back on the possibilities of the city working with the Youth Climate Corps, including potential funding sources and projects related to climate action to engage the public in promoting climate change, mitigation, and resilience.
Right, thanks for moving to seconding it. I don't know if you need to speak to it as well, or
maybe I'll speak briefly if that's all right. So Youth Climate Corps, it's a BC-based program which works with youths aged 17 to 30, as it says, primarily on projects with local governments and First Nations that help to advance climate action in their communities. They've worked successfully with the City of Vancouver and the City of Kamloops in terms of providing climate-friendly homes programs, which is very similar to the Navigator program that we have here, which helps people find their ways through the various grant programs, and a way of getting youth actively working with the community on engagement programs that those communities were planning to do either way. And there was also a presence on the North Island. Dakota Smith is a First Nations youth who's their Vancouver Island North coordinator. And he helped them coordinate the Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations on a revitalization project on trail building, learning techniques of traditional land management and other forms of cultural learning and knowledge sharing. So I think there's a lot of benefits to be had here. There are aspects of reconciliation that are involved. I think having youth be able to engage constructively on things that work towards a better future is, I think, good for the mental health and well-being of all involved. And it is also shown to allow local governments to find granting opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be available. And the particular one I'm thinking of is the Sustainable Communities Program by BC Hydro, which helped to fund the work that was being done in Kamloops by the Youth Climate Corps there. So I see them having many different benefits, and that having our staff explore this and see if it's a fit with the work that we're wanting to do, I think is a great step forward. So thanks.
Thanks so much for that brief description. Really appreciate it. And Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you for all that detail. That's great to know. I just wanted to say we did have the regional district hosted the elected officials forum around climate action, and it was noted by many that youth are definitely the future in terms of climate action. We're not going to be around for the decisions that we're making, some of the decisions we're making today, and that we really need to look to young people around this. And I think the spin-off that you kind of alluded to as well is that if we are able to engage youth in this aspect, then there may be some spin-off in terms of more engagement with younger voters in terms of local government and other other bodies as well. So I think it's definitely a win-win. Thank you. Thanks for bringing it forward.
Thanks, Councillor Morin. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thanks again. And next on the agenda is the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce funding request. Oh, what did we? Oh, I put it on the wrong side of the page. My apologies. 7.2 active transportation on Ryan Road. Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. Whereas the province and the city of Courtenay are both committed to the greenhouse gas reduction, poverty reduction, and positive healthcare outcomes. And whereas safe cycling infrastructure and active transportation in general is an important part of achieving these goals. And whereas the city has endorsed a cycling infrastructure plan and begun the investment to provide cycling and active transportation infrastructure on the portions of Ryan Road that fall within its control, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to draft and send a letter on behalf of City Council to the Minister's office to formally request a meeting with the Minister of Transportation, inclusion of active transportation infrastructure within Ministry of Transportation corridors, and that the local Courtenay office be directed to work with the City of Courtenay staff to develop actionable plans for the inclusion of active transportation infrastructure on Ryan Road. Thank you. And to think about that one. Yeah.
Those pauses.
For suspense and effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think council is mostly aware of what's going on around our transportation, but for people otherwise that might be listening or want to hear more, we've been pushing, and I think it was Councillor McCollum's motion to get a sidewalk on Ryan Road in that area. We have cycling infrastructure up to the connector, up to the bypass, Highway 19A. And again, at the top of Ryan Road, we have infrastructure for cycling. And the piece in between is sorely missing infrastructure to facilitate, both walking and cycling and other active transportation methods. And so just wanted to push this forward and get some more action. I'm not really advocating for any expensive AAA level infrastructure here, though I'd be happy to see that. But I think we do need to carve out some space, both to legitimize active transportation in that section and to make it a little more safe for those who already use it. Lots of kids going back and forth between schools in the French immersion programs are traveling east to west, and adults for work and the like. So hoping to see support here and to see some support from the province in making this happen sooner than later. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Any questions or comments? I think this has been something we've talked about for some time, but Councillor Moore.
Yeah, just wanted to speak out in support, and I was up the top of the hill the other day and just noticed with the housing going up there, and now we have the student housing going into North Island College. There were actually quite a few people out utilizing active transportation, and it just struck me how unsafe it is. I mean, we're talking about Ryan Road here, but I think just in general, that whole area. So we obviously have lots of people who prefer that type of transportation, and there are a lot of services up there. And as I said, the student housing and other housing going in. So I think we do need to push this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moran. And yeah, I think it took a decade or two for the signaled crossing to go at North Island College. So certainly see this as a positive move forward, and really appreciate you bringing it forward. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? It passes unanimously, and we will now move into the zero carbon step code, and I'm bringing this back for reconsideration. Councillor
So first we need to either put something back on the floor or rescind it, so we have to deal with this one first.
So, but somebody has to put a motion forward to rescind. So Councillor Cole Hamilton. Once again.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to say thanks for taking the opportunity to reconsider this, and particularly around the timeline. And I just want to put forward a motion to rescind this resolution, and then following that, there's a resolution I wish to put forward, which I shared with the city manager and the mayor, and more recently with council. Thanks.
Excellent. So you've made a motion.
I did make a motion. It's somewhere there.
Just clarifying, did somebody second that? Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And is there any discussion on the rescinding? I think there's been much discussion around this motion. With that being said, all those in favor of rescinding? And that is, any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. And back to you, Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you. This is the resolution I alluded to earlier. So I'd like to move that be it resolved that in keeping with the city's official community plan, staff incorporate into the 2025 work plan and budget the staff resources and funding required for the engagement and policy development needed to accelerate the adoption of levels EL3 and EL4 of the zero carbon step code.
All right, that's been seconded. Thanks to our clerk for putting it up on the screen so everybody can see that. Are there any questions or comments regarding, and there are, so I will start with Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. Just trying to catch up here a little bit. I'm wondering if Councillor Cole Hamilton might comment on how much we're speeding this up. I see it goes into the 2025 work plan. How much faster ahead do you suspect that'll get us, or do you hope that gets us?
Well, the previous plan was to implement levels 3 and 4 in 2027 and 2030 respectively. So it, depending on the outcome of this process, it would seem to move things forward a number of years.
Excellent. And I guess we'll have to see what staff bring back to us. Is that the intention, to see how quickly they can pull this off?
Yeah, to see what possibilities are for accelerating the timeline, which at this point is 3 to 6 years.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much.
Excellent. Thanks for the question, Councillor Frisch. And next we have Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief because we discussed this in pretty good detail at the last meeting, but I just want to emphasize that, there seems to be a fair amount of confusion or conflation between the two different step codes, especially because they both are part of the options in the building code. But the zero carbon step code is really just speaking to fuel sources within homes. We're basically talking about gas or electricity. So having this implemented is not the same level of complexity that we have engaged on when it came to the energy step code already. It represents a change for sure, but it's questionable whether or not there's really even a change to the cost of building. I mean, that's obviously not my expertise, but I did ask just for some background on our building permits from the previous year. And 75% of our commercial buildings don't use gas as a fuel source. In other words, they're using electric. So 75% of our existing new builds are already at the EL3 level. So I just want to emphasize that this is not like a huge change. A lot of this is already happening. We're just speeding up or constraining that other 25%. So yeah, I don't think that there should be the level of need for communication or for that for developers to become familiar with this in the same way, because it really is just speaking to one aspect of building and not a whole bunch of different things the way the energy step code does. So thanks for that.
All right, thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a question. I don't know if it's to Councillor Cole Hamilton or to staff, but given that we rescinded the last motion in its entirety, the first that statement said that we'll adopt the zero carbon step code, and the third one said that we'd give staff to engage with the development community and to inform them on the zero carbon step code. So I mean, those components I was in favor of, and I think that you can insinuate that this motion on the table says that we're going to adopt the zero carbon step code, but I'm just wondering for clarification if we want to include those two, which I don't think are explicitly mentioned in this. This for me, I think really addresses that and that statement that was in the middle that had the timelines. So I'm not sure if there's enough direction here for staff as it relates to the original three that statements in the original motion.
All right. Ms. Wade, did you want to weigh in, or Councillor Hamilton? I'll pass it over. Hang on one second. Councillor Cole Hamilton, we'll see if you can do it.
Yeah.
And then if Ms. Wade says she's got some more, we'll jump back to her.
Ms. Wade is the expert, but my thinking when drafting this was that it speaks of engagement and policy development. So I felt the engagement piece was there. And you're right, it is implicit. We are going to be working with the zero carbon step code, and then a report will come back on how we can adopt it at an accelerated rate. If staff feels there's anything additional that could be added, I'm very open to any amendments required to make sure that it's clear that we are both planning to adopt it and planning to engage with our development community. So perhaps Ms. Wade can tell me if this is adequately clear.
Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur and through to Councillor Cole Hamilton, just if I could clarify. So the previous one was about actually adopting it so that it would be ingrained right away, and that the E1 going to E2 would be starting as of that adoption. And the second part of it was to actually do the engagement that is up on the screen there without having the motion for adoption of the zero step code or zero carbon step code emission, all the acronyms, that it wouldn't be adopted right now, and we would come back with an engagement and all that, but it would not be adopted right now in our building bylaw.
Right. So just with that, that was my understanding. So I think I'd like to propose that we're adopting the provincial zero carbon step code, and to make that clear in this motion. And the other thing that I think is missing, it doesn't speak in the original motion. It says EL2 in 2024, whereas this doesn't speak to EL2 or anything to do with 2024. So those two I'd like to add to this. So I would say it would be an amendment to the motion that says that council adopt the provincial zero carbon step code. And and that council directs staff to amend the building bylaw to include zero carbon performance levels in accordance with the timelines established for applicable Part 3, Part 9 buildings, starting with EL2 in 2024.
And Mr. Garbutt's got a comment.
So and thank you through the mayor to council. So in discussions, the intention was to direct staff to speak with the building and development area, inform them of the intentions of council, and come back with information on that engagement, presenting council with a process whereby we would do that. If council would like to adopt the code, then we have to, and Ms. Wade can correct me if I'm wrong, we have to set a level. We had a previous motion with set levels with EL2, I believe, to be current. So just want to make sure that council is good with that, because we won't be initiating this work save for EL2 until 2025 per the proposed motion.
And I think one of the considerations is that staff are under a mountain load of stuff right now with all the legislative changes. So to add this in 2024 was potentially for success wouldn't necessarily put us where we want to be. I think that was part of the conversation, but I see Councillor Cole Hamilton has his light on, so I'll pass it back to him.
Well, Councillor Frisch had it on, his light on before, but the thinking behind here, I mean, from this meeting and last meeting, was the concern over the workload that staff have. It's huge and it's unprecedented. And I've heard it described as an atmospheric river of legislation that you're addressing on housing, and that's got to be the priority. And we absolutely see that. And I think rather than having staff spending time this year trying to engage on adopting EL2, which is a fairly minimal improvement, it seemed better to let staff get the work that they need to get done in 2024 done, and then begin work fresh in 2025 when in the last meeting, the city manager was saying he thought there would be time available at that point. And at that point, begin analyzing the approach to EL3 and EL4. And those are the provisions of the STEP code which actually have real bite and real impact in terms of sheet reduction. So I think the thinking on my part was, rather than engaging staff on work this year when they don't have time on a level which is not particularly effectual, just to save it and do it all as a single significant piece in 2025. But that was the thinking behind it.
Thanks. Hopefully that clarifies, and we'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. What I'm hearing is that the original motion, I think, encapsulated a supportable work plan by council, but in the second portion, the second paragraph that talked about timing on EL2, EL3, and EL4, we're trying to massage this to get a quicker adoption of EL3 and EL4. That's what I'm sensing. I would think most of this motion still applies. I think we still want to adopt the zero-step code. That's quite clear. We want staff to work with the development and construction industry. And so really we're just talking about those last pieces in the second paragraph. I wonder if it's worthwhile to go ahead and adopt EL2 and then just ask staff to come back with a report, I guess, as soon as possible on how fast we can do EL3 and EL4. I don't know if putting the work off to 2025 is necessary. It sounds like the work to do that, to consider that, might have come up earlier, but maybe staff want to clarify when they were planning on doing that originally.
All right, Ms. Wade.
Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch, thanks for the question, and I'll try to clarify. Sorry, this has been a little confusing. So the intent was to adopt the zero carbon step code and to go to EL2 to align with the OCP policy, to be one ahead, because right now there's no requirement, and EL1 would be the first one. So EL2 would put us that step ahead as per OCP policy, and then to go out to the industry and engage, and we would look towards 2025 because it is an atmospheric river right now.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Sounds like, yeah, it sounds like this is fairly similar to what we had before, except we're not going to adopt EL2. I wonder if staff have any comment on how much work it will be to adopt EL2.
Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch, it's a matter of amending the building bylaw and bringing it into play. And then we would go out to the industry and engage and inform that the L2, which is aligned with the OCP. I could have Mr. Preston, our manager of building services, talk to you a little bit more about that, but it's really being in line with being ahead of where we are right now, because there's no requirement in the BC Building Code right now. So it is adhering to council's strategic priorities to be one step ahead and to get the emissions target and start using those metrics so we can have them in play, which then would just be part of the building permit application. So it's relatively simple to implement for staff right now. The going to EL3 and 4 is a lot to engage on right now with our atmospheric river. It's just too much for us right now, but 2025 is much more doable.
Well, thanks, and I'll digress to let other people speak.
All right, thanks, Councillor Frisch. Mr. Garber.
Through the mayor to council. So we actually had this conversation in the previous council meeting. There's a comprehensive staff report which laid that out. We have the matter has been reconsidered and been rescinded. So I would think procedurally we'd be focusing on the topic at hand as opposed to discussing the merits of the initial, which was effectively the previous staff report, which was, or sorry, this previous recommendation that was passed by council. So I just want to just outline that we should be focusing in on the items related to this motion.
Thanks for that, keeping us focused and on task. I appreciate that. Councillor Collum.
Yeah, I think with that comment, I'll keep my comments brief, but I am in support of what we've put forward here. My comments in the last meeting was that I think it has yet to be proven that EL2 even would lead to a measurable decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. So tasking staff currently with implementing a level that is, to me, questionable whether that really even moves the dial in the direction that we're looking for. I don't see a lot of value in moving on that currently. I would rather see us focus on a work plan that staff have the capacity to do, looking a little further into the future, and will result in moving carbon emissions in new buildings down. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, and I'm in support of the motion as it's written, without looking back.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think the real issue here, as I understood it, has been about making sure that the work we want to do here fits well with the workload that our staff have in this unusual time. And this resolution was specifically, it's really just about the timeline and was about adjusting it so that it would fit better with staff's workload. My understanding from speaking with the city manager and listening to his comments in the previous meeting is that 2025 is a time when staff would have available to do a comprehensive deep dive into this and work on an engagement rather than doing a small piece of engagement on level 2 this year and then a subsequent follow-up piece next year. It was just mainly to move this out of their way so they could get the work done on housing and then consider this in sequence. So in terms of timing, my understanding is this fits best with the availability the staff had. That certainly was my understanding when drafting it. And just we're talking a lot about EL3s and EL4s, and I think probably most people aren't entirely sure what all that means. So just very briefly, like as Councillor McCollum said, this is about fuel sources for appliances. That's all it's about. So to get to EL4, all you would need is an electric heat pump, an electric hot water heater, an electric stove in your kitchen. That's it. That's all. That is what we're talking about. And I just thought it might be useful just to sort of clarify so we can all picture what's being envisaged here. and what we're working towards. So anyway, I hope the timeline works well for staff, and I look forward to hearing council's thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I might be speaking out of turn here, but I think one of the challenges that we have if we're adding or asking staff to do a particular thing as a council versus something that is being legislated by the province, I think the province's priorities trump ours, unfortunately. And so, you know, we're just not setting ourselves up for success. I think really at the end of the day, and this hopefully gets us to the success that we're really wanting, which is reducing those GHGs as quick as possible. Back to Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. As someone who works in the construction industry, I think it would actually be very beneficial to adopt EL2. And the reason is that it sends a signal and it warms the different players up to the idea of this regulation coming through. It gets probably the paperwork ready so that there's a list of things that they have to get used to doing. And then, you know, just understanding that this new terminology, EL2, what does that mean? Then they might look up what EL3 means and then, you know, be more ready. So I think there's some value in doing that. It doesn't sound like it's a lot of work. My question for staff is, at this point, because we've rescinded that previous motion, what options do we have if we liked the majority of the previous motion, for instance, adopting step code, for instance, adopting EL2, going back to the development and construction industry for their insight. What are our options for adding those pieces back into this current motion on the floor?
Madam Clerk.
So procedurally, right now, we have this motion on the floor. We had Councillor Jolicoeur who moved an amendment, but I did not get a seconder. So the amendment that Councillor Jolicoeur moved would have added the council adopt the provincial zero carbon step code, and then the majority of the subsequent paragraph ending with starting with EL2 in 2024. So that would have added that to this motion, but we did not get a seconder for that. Alternatively, it might be less confusing to, if council wants to defeat the motion that is on the floor right now and propose a new motion if it's going to be quite different than this one.
Would it be possible for me to second that amendment at this point? I'd like to second that, please.
Yep, you can second the amendment.
Thank you. And if I can speak to it quickly, I think that adds in the pieces that I really valued from the last motion and leaves the pieces from this new motion that ask for staff to come back on perhaps an accelerated plan for EL3 and EL4. And I'm happy to support that if the amendment passes.
All right, so we have a amendment on the floor. Are there any questions or comments regarding the amendment as proposed? And I'm going to go a little slow just as the words are being typed out. Sing away. Maybe some Jeopardy here. Councillor Hillian.
Just while there's a moment, Mayor, I'm going to vote against the amendment. We've just heard that staff don't have the capacity to do the work. And so I think it's counterproductive to propose an action that involves them doing work that they don't have the capacity to do. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Appreciate that. Councillor Frisch.
It just inspired me to ask another question. I misunderstood then. I thought that staff felt they had time in 2025 to look at EL3 and EL4 and its implementation. Maybe they could just clarify if in the original motion they didn't feel like they had time to look at that implementation and not look at doing the implementation, but actually look at what that timeline would be or how they would do that.
Okay, Mr. Garvey.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch, staff have the time in 2025 to do the engagement work to come back with a proposal or contemplated the implementation of an accelerated zero carbon step code.
Thank you for that.
Okay. We got a few going here now. Councillor McCullum.
Yeah, I'm also gonna vote against the amendment. To me, it doesn't make sense to start a small piece of this process now and be directive on the time. I think it would make more sense to look at where we're trying to go with this and do engagement on that piece. And this really, I don't think helps with communicating where we'd like to go. And it doesn't seem like a good use of staff capacity at this particular moment in time. So I'm not supportive.
Thanks for that. And Councillor Joker.
Yeah, well, the original motion had staff doing engagement after the EL2 implementation in 2024. So I don't actually see this as any different. It's still happening in the previous year. I did hear staff in response to Councillor Cole Hamilton's question around EL2 in 2024 say that it is something that they could do now, that it would require the amendment to the bylaw. I did not hear that it was a lot of work. I think I heard staff say that it's something that could be done now for EL2. So I'm wondering if I could just get confirmation that I in fact heard that correctly.
Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. As per the original staff recommendation, we have the capacity to make the changes to the building bylaw and bring in EL2. The comments that I made previously was that that was removed per council's conversations. So yes, we can draft the required amendments to the bylaw, the building bylaw, but we would not have the capacity to engage with the building public about the implications of that at this time. However, the impacts that have been discussed are not significant as it relates to the regulatory side of EL2 and the zero carbon building code.
Okay. Last call for any questions or comments. I know we're trying to stay focused, but I think we've had a pretty engaged conversation here. Hopefully everybody is understanding where we are right now. We're going to take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? And the amendment fails. So going back to the motion unamended. And we'll just make sure the screen is good. And Councillor Frisch.
Thank you, Mayor. Seeing that the amendment has failed, I can no longer support the motion. And so I'm going to look to defeat the current motion and just go back with the original staff recommendation. Thanks.
All right, thanks for that. The original one was rescinded, so we're left with this. So I'm going to call, unless there's any further questions or comments on the main motion as presented today, all those in favor? And any opposed? And one opposed, Councillor Frisch. Thank you. All right, thanks for that discussion. I know this was, it's a lot. We spent some time on it on our last council meeting. I just want to appreciate staff and council for staying focused on this one. As I think everybody agrees, it's that zero carbon step code, especially those higher levels that are going to have the biggest impacts on greenhouse gases. And with that, we will move to item 8.2, Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce funding request. And Councillor Morin.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that staff be directed to prepare an agreement between the City of Courtenay and the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce to facilitate the development and implementation of a comprehensive business retention and expansion program for council's consideration.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Joker.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm generally quite supportive of this. I really appreciated the presentation. I'm wondering if staff can speak to, council had some questions around the split of the costs under the project budget and some conversations around Cumberland and the CVRD, because right now it's just Courtenay and Comox. So I'm wondering if we have an update from them and what would be the total cost that would be in here for those 3 years.
Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. A couple of updates. First, it's my understanding that the town of Comox agreed at their last council meeting to work with the chamber. The motion in front of you is for us to work with the chamber. We didn't know what the outcome would be. So based on the budget that was presented, I believe it was 66% Courtney, 33% Comox. With respect to participating other parties, Comox First Nation has their own economic development corporation, so I wouldn't potentially see them be a partner in this. However, the chamber said that they would reach out and ask the question. With respect to Cumberland, it's my understanding that they have made some decisions about their own delivery of economic development services, and the chamber said they could potentially reach out to them. And I can report back, that's the status. The program that's designed right now is scalable. So I would presume that if someone else was added in, the budget would increase relative to that cost, and we could report back on that.
Thanks.
Thanks for that question, Councillor Jolicoeur. No further discussion. Oh, Councillor, there's a few actually. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, we're basically how are we expecting that we'll fund this, given that it's a fairly immediate request and we're in the process of doing budget. Just would like to hear from staff if we would be looking toward council initiatives type funding, or if we have room for this in the current budget deliberations, or I'm just kind of curious about timing of the request versus where we're at with the budget preparation.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Through the chair, through the mayor to Councillor McCollum. We had previously budgeted for this work in 2023, and we have ongoing funds in this administrator's budget to address economic development initiatives. And I'll defer to my colleague, Mr. Langemeier, if I've need any further clarification. Thank you.
That's an official thumbs up. Excellent. All right. Oh yeah, Mr. Garvin.
So just to clarify, no budget increase as it relates to that.
All right. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment on the money side of it. My recollection is that it was about $120,000 over 3 years. And it sounds like that number might change if there's more participants and more work to be done, but 66% of that puts us around roughly 75,000. I don't know if staff want to comment on that, if that sounds like kind of the ballpark we're talking, but thought I'd throw that out there for others.
Lots of nodding heads, so yeah, that's pretty close. Excellent. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously, and move on to the Brazilian Foundation funding request. And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, the council provide up to 5,000 from the other council initiatives budget in support of the Brazilian Cultural Foundation to cover event expenses, including food and housing for cultural leaders, rental of Comox Big House, accommodations and transportation, and that staff provide the Brazilian Cultural Foundation with information regarding the Comox Valley Community Foundation's grant timelines.
Okay, it's been seconded. Any discussion, Councillor Hillian?
Thanks, Mayor. I think the second part of the resolution is significant because it implies that we don't necessarily suggest that this group come back to apply to council, that if they want these types of grants in future, that they should go through the community foundation. I think it is worthy of some support. I note that this comes from gaming revenues, which we have some rough understanding that part of the way we spend gaming revenues is in a way that benefits the entire community that supports the casino. So it doesn't have implications for the taxpayer. But I think what we're trying to do is send the message to most groups that would approach the city for this type of funding that we've switched the way we do grants, and this is the way to go in future. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, for those comments. I mean, yeah, to be clear, this is a one-time funding. And Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I have some concerns around supporting this recommendation, mostly out of the fact that we currently provide funding through the recreation grant for events. We set aside as a region, a fairly significant amount of money that serves this exact purpose, that organizations that are planning arts and culture and sport events can apply to the rec culture and arts grant for this specific purpose. And as a organization, we've already contributed to that. So when we received the delegation, it did not sound as though that they had sought out that funding. And so I would prefer that we provide them with the information around the Comox Valley Community Foundation grant timelines and direct them to that granting system. It's in place for a reason. I do have a hesitation around us reverting to providing funding when we're getting delegation requests, when we're setting money aside for the Comox Community Foundation system that we've agreed on and as an equitable way of receiving monies. And we're also funding it in another funding source that we're just creating another system that is a bit ad hoc and lacking policy. And my other concern around this request is that it sounds like a wonderful event, but it's not open to the public. And we're using public dollars to support something that is for, a limited group of people. So I would prefer to see us direct this funding request to the channels that we've already put in place for these kind of asks. So with that thinking, I will not be supporting the recommendation. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. Appreciate your comments. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? And motion is defeated. All right. Next on the agenda, we have the notice of motion. Oh, yes, Councillor Frisch.
Would it be worthwhile adding to the letter to directing this organization to that funding source? I assume we'll write some sort of letter to let them know what's happened to their request.
I'm seeing some nods. Would we need a follow-up motion to write a letter like that?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think staff have that. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, just as a note, adding to spurred by what Councillor Frisch just said, that I think this was suggested to them when they appeared 2 weeks ago, and I think it was mentioned at that time that the deadline is March 1st. So the letter would have to go out fairly quickly.
Now.
There still is time, but I think that was drawn to their attention. So hopefully they've had an opportunity to put an application in.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And I think, the person chatting did say that, this is sort of her first kick at the can. So learning who's who in the zoo and where to apply all that stuff is pretty new to her. So fully appreciate the comments from today. All right. Notice of motion from Councillor Jolicoeur.
The notice of motion is on the screen. This is to do with mental health and addiction treatment beds. Looking forward to the discussion at our next meeting.
All right. Thanks for that. And we'll get into council reports, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton. Councillor Morin.
Yeah, I have a question. I know we don't obviously discuss the notice of motions, but if there is some kind of a wording issue, we would discuss that next week. Okay, or when it comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could talk with the councillor that has the motion there. So
Okay,
basically this gives us a framework, and then there may be some tweaks to it. For instance, I mentioned that in addition to the letter, maybe we request a meeting as well. So those kinds of things can kind of be talked about between now and then, or at next meeting as well. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, and does that conform to our procedure that if we come back with something that's substantially different, is that a problem? Going from a notice of motion to a motion that is somewhat different?
I'm going to look to our legislative expert, Ms. Burton.
Sorry,
If,
I can
if,
rephrase
if the notice of motion, when it comes back as an actual motion, if there's significant changes, does that still follow our procedures in terms of complying with?
Thanks. So if it significantly changes, then the correct procedure would be to provide another notice of motion with the changes in it. Or of course, council can always resolve to consider the resolution immediately and not provide a notice of motion since it's council's procedure bylaw and you can choose what to do.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so to reiterate on this particular one, if you've got any suggestions or questions or comments, follow up with Councillor Jolicoeur as soon as possible, as we'll be setting the agenda within the next week. So, and in fact, if any changes were good by Friday, that would be awesome, because that's when we'd want it in so that we can get proper eyes on it before we move forward. Okay, thanks for the questions. Appreciate that. Moving on to council reports. We'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. And at the risk of making my colleague Councillor Moran blush, I'm just going to say that on February 17th, I went to the 25th anniversary of the girls groups in the Comox Valley. And Mayor, I know you provided valuable tech support there. And although it wasn't exclusively about Councillor Moran, but she has been a pivotal part of that program for a quarter of a century. And it was really quite moving, I have to say, as a father of a daughter, to hear young women who'd found their voices and felt a renewed sense of confidence and a love of hummus, which I believe Director Councillor Moran can explain. But it was a real celebration of something that's been a big and an important part of the life of young women in this community. And just thanks to Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Councillor Cole Hamilton. Appreciate that. Councillor Frisch. Oh. You're going to get your own time, though. Well, sorry, you were passing? Okay. And that gets us to Councillor Hillian. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to highlight that the Comox Valley Coldest Night of the Year took place on Saturday. And just have it up on the screen right now. You still have the opportunity to donate. We haven't quite hit our goal of 200,000 for the community. We're at 88% of that goal, and you can donate until March 31st. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And moving on to Councillor McCollum. And Councillor Moore. No, sorry.
I don't have a report. I haven't had many council activities, but just wanted to say thank you to all those who walked in coldest night. I have a very badly sprained foot and I wasn't able to walk, but I did try to contribute to as many people as possible. And just to say thank you to Councillor Cole Hamilton for those kind and generous words. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moran. And yeah, and I did attend that event, and it was amazing to really get the history of it and a sense of how it impacted people in a positive way. Again, coldest night of the year. Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur. You know, we're at $175,000, but I'm sure that there's some more funds out there. But really, when we talk about back-to-back events, the night before coldest night of the year was the Anna Big Club dinner, which also raised a significant amount of money that will be utilized in our community, just like coldest night of the year. So just really inspired by our community. We also had about 25 Rotary Youth Exchange students from around the world in our in Courtenay for about a week, and it was a great time, and our community really stepped up to show them around. And on Saturday, there was also, prior to coldest night, there was the second year anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine event at Marina Park that was, again, very well attended. And yeah, so it was just really, really inspiring to see our community come out and support each other in many ways over the last couple of weeks. And with that, we'll go into our in-camera resolution. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Excellent. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously, and we will Bill and Cameron. Counselor.
Just on a point of order, Mayor, is it given that we're reconvening the open portion of the meeting at 4 o'clock? Is that the
Yep.
intent?
Absolutely. So we'll be taking basically, we'll be going in camera, and then if we finish before 4 o'clock, we'll take a period of time, but we will come back to at 4 o'clock. So, yeah. And then that way, because we'll be talking about financial plan, that allows any members of the public, because they are allowed to ask questions. So, yeah. Thanks for the question,